organic certification for specialty crops. If we haven't met before, my name is Sarah Hipperson, program coordinator with the University of Arizona Extension, Urban Ag Production, Small Scale and Beginning Farmer Program. So this webinar is brought to you by TOP, Transition to Organic Partnership Program, through our program. We have four workshops actually happening this year. Two are on organic specialty crops, this current webinar, and then there will be an in-person one later on this year. And then two on organic livestock, also one webinar, and then another in-person also later this year. So follow us on Instagram or subscribe to our newsletter for those upcoming dates. Okay, so this is our agenda for today. It's going to be a hefty download of really awesome information. So I will present on organic certification and transition, go through some regulations. Courtney Buzzard from ASU Sweetie Center will follow me with an overview of the AZ Top program and the great things that that program has to offer. And then Marina Oriel from NRCS will present on their organic management standard and what that has to offer you if you're transitioning or looking for certification. Then we'll go into a 20-minute Q&A. So as we're going through these presentations, if you can drop your questions in the chat, and at this Q&A time, we will go through all of them. So definitely any questions that you have, drop in there. All right, then we go for probably a much needed 10-minute break. And when we come back, I'm really excited to introduce to you Nick McCarthy, an organic certified crop producer. And Colleen is going to go through kind of an interview style questions with him. And then we'll end with any of our questions or your questions for Nick. Okay, so just the basic, hopefully, outcomes we're going to get from this presentation, gaining some knowledge of the history of organic and its movement, which I think is very important to understanding what organic is and the reason why it's a certification. Understanding the meaning of the label for organic and the key players in the public-private partnership that it is. Knowing where to find the organic law, being familiar with the National Organic Program, which is the requirements and the regulations, and just going through common mistakes when it comes to transitioning or going after that certification. And also, we're going to let you know what resources that you have, and hopefully you have like a holistic idea of what to expect when transitioning to organic. Okay, so we're going to roll into it. Organic is the label. So acquiring and maintaining this label means that your product has met the organic standards and it's been verified to have met those standards. So a product with the label organic can be trusted by consumers as well as other fellow farmers or other handlers. From a crop producer's perspective, perhaps the definition by the National Organic Program explains organic from a producer perspective. So the definition of organic is a production system that responds to site-specific conditions by integrating cultural, biological, and mechanical practices that foster the cycling of resources, promote ecological balance, and conserve biological diversity. So I want to just point out where it says it's a production system. So it's a plan, like a method the farmer follows when transitioning to maintain organic certification. And it's also site specific. This can be this is understood that no specific one farmer is the same. An organic system plan is to be created with the farmer's special needs and conditions in mind. For example, your location, the crops that you grow, your weeds, your pests, your equipment on hand, the soil type, weather conditions, etc. So let's dive into the origins of organic and the movement that shaped these definitions that led Congress to pass the Organic Food Production Act, and the USDA developing rules and regulations for production handling, production, labeling, and enforcing of those organic products. All right, so organic agriculture draws its inspiration from polyculture, cover cropping, crop rotation, and intercropping techniques that date back to ancient agricultural traditions and practices from places like India, China, Africa, and like even the early Americas, with the indigenous style of, let's say, Three Sisters method, intercropping corn, squash, and beans. And some of these practices are up to 3,000 years old. Um, India's traditional agricultural system and practices have actually been very significant on its influence in the organic movement, with its emphasis on maintaining soil health, using compost, green manures, and also like really deep-rooted crops. So let's take it way back to the 1900s with these two gentlemen, Sir Albert Howard and Franklin Hiram King, also known as F.H. King. So they looked outside the United States for answers to the reason why US soil was degrading only after just a few generations of farming, yet agriculture remained so productive on the same land in other civilizations for thousands of years. Sir Albert Howard at the top there was raised on a farm in England and moved to India, spending about 26 years there as an agricultural researcher. He gained a lot of inspiration from India's traditional sustainable farming practices, and then advocated for those practices in the West. He wrote several books that focuses on, um, well, his main book, The Agricultural Testament, focuses on the importance of utilizing available waste materials for building and maintaining soil fertility and humus in the soil, what he called the law of return. Franklin Hiram King, F.H. King, at the bottom there is an American agricultural scientist and inventor. He actually invented the cylindrical silo, the one we are so used to seeing today. But he's mostly well known for writing Farmers of 40 Centuries, and he recounts his firsthand investigations of traditional farming practices in places like China, Korea, and Japan, which also supports healthy soil and a natural regenerative type ecosystem. And as was common practice of the day and many years to come, he was opposed to the use of synthetic fertilizers and the nutrient deficient model. So he rather emphasized largely also on building soil humus and supporting soil biology, which in turn supported healthy plants and healthy livestock and healthy people. This guy, Dr. George W. Carver, is amazing. And he is an agricultural scientist, inventor, and lifelong educator. He's a botany student and the first African American student at Iowa Agricultural College. He later served as agricultural director at Tuskegee International or Institute in Alabama for 47 years. And also in 1935, Dr. Carver became an official collaborator with the USDA and served in this position until just a year before his passing in 1943. He wrote 44 bulletins on the benefits of organic agriculture. He promoted the practice of using compost to reinforce nutrients and add organic matter to the soil, which is a practice central to organic farming today. And his efforts to revitalize depleted southern soil stripped by cotton led to the development of using the peanut as a popular rotational crop, among other amazing things that peanuts can do for us or have done for us. There's much to honor this man about, and the list goes on, and his breakthroughs and accomplishments are also really long. We owe many of the early breakthroughs in soil health to Dr. Carver, and he gave modern architecture like a roadmap for soil health, regeneration, and conservation. All right, Lady Eve Balfour. She is a British farmer, educator, and organic farming advocate, and a prominent, passionate figure in the organic movement that was emerging in the 40s. And she felt strongly in alternatives to chemical agriculture and started the first long-term side-by-side scientific comparison of organic and conventional farming, notably the Hewley experiment, which divided 216 acres into three sections using different combination of organic and inorganic fertilizers. In 1943, she published a book called The Living Soil, describing her experiment, which emphasized the importance of organic practices for soil, crop, and human health. Jerome Rodale, an awesome contribution to organic agriculture. He was an early organic convert. In the movement. And after reading actually Sir Albert Howard's work, he purchased a farm in Allenstown, PA, and began labeling Sir Albert Howard's writings as organic. And here he began organic systems trials, research trials. And in 1942, he started the Organic Farming and Gardening magazine, disseminating organic principles and research through this magazine to a wider US audience. In 1945 and 1948, he wrote the books Pay Dirt and The Organic Front as well. And in 1947, he founded the Soil and Health Foundation, which later was renamed to the Rodale Institute, which we know of today. In 81, the Rodale Institute launched a now long-standing farming systems trials that was actually inspired by Lady Eve Balfour's work, focusing on addressing the barriers to the adoption of organic farming through applied research. As Rodale communicated the idea of creating nutrient-rich, contamination-free soil, people began to really listen, and the acceptance of organic grew. So, as more visibility into the benefits of organic farming started to happen in the 60s and 70s, US consumers became increasingly concerned over pesticides and their use. In the minds of consumers, not using pesticides was a very important part of organic agriculture. USDA began surveying organic farmers to increase the communication with the organic community, which resulted in this report that recognized the role organic agriculture could play in being a more sustainable type of agriculture. It was buried a little bit by the Reagan administration, but it continued to be read pretty widely by the public. So in the 1980s, the organic industry grew pretty significantly, which led to the formation of standards and third parties, the certifiers. Although these certifiers developed their own independent organic standards and processes for certification. And this caused a lot of disparities among certifying standards, which result in a lot of barriers to trade and a lot of breakdown in consumers' trust for organic. So this led many to believe that a more consistent set of standards for organic were really needed and necessary, like a single set of US standards for organic production, labeling, and marketing. And so in 1990, due to this pressure in this movement from organic farmers and consumers, the pressure from organic farmers and consumers led Congress to pass the OFPA, which is the Organic Foods Production Act. It's a centralized mechanism for protecting the organic claim. So this act then in 2000 formed the creation of the NOP, which is the National Organic Program, part of the USDA, actually the Agricultural Marketing Services, and went into effect in October 2002. And it governs actually the organic crop production, livestock production, handling, processing, and labeling of organic. And then also in 2002, the creation of the Organic Standards Board, the NOSB. I know we're going to go through a lot of acronyms today, which is actually a board of 15 people, volunteers. And they include organic farmers, organic processors, or handlers, as they're called, retailers, environmentalists, scientists, and consumer advocates. So for those who aren't aware, organic started as a fringe market, but then over time became a mainstream sort of thing in the consumer's eyes. So hopefully this kind of explains the public-private partnership of organic certification. I'm sorry if it is kind of a little confusing, but I'm going to try and show it to you here. Okay, so we're going to start off with the NOP, so the National Organic Program, which is the rules and regulations for the production, handling, and labeling. And it enforces all USDA organic products. Right up there. Can you guys see my mouse? Yeah. Okay. The NOP is then advised by the NOSB, so the National Organic Standards Board, and that is of the volunteers, like I said before, organic farmers, processors, retailers, environmentalists, and it consists of 15 people, and they serve a 5-year uncompensated voluntary term. So the NOP accredits certifiers. They're called accredited certifying agents, as they're called. And they work to establish international trade as well, but mostly here in the United States are certifiers. So they can consist of private organizations, state organizations, and like I said, foreign governments, but most of them are actually private certifiers here in the United States. All right, so your certifiers are the people or the organizations that hire your inspectors for visual physical verification and of your application to the certifier for organic certification. And the inspectors basically just kind of give their findings to the certifier, and the certifier then certifies the farmers and ranchers or processors and handlers for organic, being able to label themselves and their products as organic. And of course, the retailers and consumers consume these products. So right here, you can see that feedback from each of these layers will actually go back to the NOSB, which then communicates back and forth with the NOP. All right, so the organic market has grown tremendously over time, showcasing the opportunity for organic products, and it's continued to be a very strong demand. So this is kind of a premium product, organic. From the 2023 OTA Organic Industry Survey, the US organic food sales in 2022 actually broke through $60 billion. And the total organic sales, including non-food products, were record high at $67.6 billion. So it's quite a market, and it's a very strong one. All right, so we're going to go into a little bit of the general certification process. Now, no two certifiers are alike, and they will have their own process and requirements. So please research and review your certifier and become familiar with their application needs. So this is just a general certification process that most certifiers will do. And basically, when you're looking to transition, you would find your certifier, look at what they're requiring for their application process. And this is just, again, an example. So you would submit your application and other documents, for example, the application on organic systems plan, a farm map, histories of your fields, and an operator agreement or affirmation, and a report on the organic yields and sales that you had. Then the certifier will review this application, send an inspector to visit your farm, and after the inspector reports back, the certifier reviews the inspector's report, and the certifier will issue you an organic certification. For renewal of the process, again, it just depends on your certifier, but this is just the basic process that's up here. All right. Okay, so now that we have kind of the big picture, let's zoom in and see how all of this may apply to your operation. So this is the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 7, Part 205, the National Organic Program. So this is the rules and regulations, the guidebook, the manual, the Bible, if you will, if that's your way of thinking of a very important set of instructions and regulations. When transitioning to organic or maintaining your certification, understanding and meeting the NOP rules and regulations is imperative in order to be compliant. And this is where the terms, expectations, requirements for certification is defined and explained for you. So you should continuously work towards being compliant with this NOP. So we dropped a link in the chat. If you could go ahead and click on it, we're going to do a little exercise right now and take a little time to familiarize yourself with this page and this part. And there's some places to click on the left-hand side. And if you can take a minute to try and find part 205.201 for me, that would be great. All right. And when you do find it and go through it and read it, if you could pop into the chat just a few sentences of what you think you've read in this section, and what it means, and the key takeaways you have from this section.
Sarah, I'm not able to click anything on the left to get into it.
In the chat?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, if you don't mind opening up the chat real quick, you should be able to see a link in there to, it says link
Let's see if
pictured.
it's going to come through. on our end, we're having problems with our internet. It keeps going up and down.
Oh,
So,
I'm sorry. Okay, well, I will be
all right, we
showing
finally got it.
okay. Great. All right. How are we feeling, everybody? I know it looks like a long one, right? All right. Awesome. All right. I'm gonna go to our next slide. So I know it is kind of a read, and guide for how to create the plan needed for compliance. It's a very, very good answer. Yeah, terminology to understand the meaning of words and phrases. That would be your very first part, which definitely is the terminology and the definitions. But if you can pop off to the left there of the page, right at the top where it says table of contents, and you will see 205.201. And the title that I would like you to navigate to is called Organic Production and Handling Systems Plan. Okay, so let me move on here. So this specific title will go to 205.201 Organic Production and Handling System. And that basically is the key takeaways from this particular section is that among the documents that are required from your certifier, like we saw before, your field plan, the general application is the OSP, the Organic Systems Plan. So developing one and then maintaining the OSP is an essential part of the initial and ongoing certification process. So the OSP must be written by the producer and approved by the certifier. And the plan must also allow the certifier to assess whether you can meet the requirements of organic certification. It also must sufficiently be detailed so that the certifier can get a clear picture of your farm's crops, harvest, sales, record keeping, soil practices, pest management practices, and any other practices related to your organic production. So I want to stress your remembering back to a few slides ago, where the NOP definition of organic production is a production system that responds to site-specific conditions. So it's understood that no one farm is the same. So an organic systems plan is to be created with your specific needs and conditions in mind, as long as it adheres to the NOP. So the OSP is your opportunity to kind of describe your organic farm and farming operation to a person who's never seen it before. So for the next few slides, I'll be running through different sections of the NOP, which you see is available to you in the link. And I suggest that you also get very familiar with the NOP and its regulations. We're going to specifically bring up some areas for crop production certification. We grabbed this list from the Organic Agronomy Training Services and also the formerly known New Mexico Organic Commodities Commission. And this list is kind of parts of the NOP that are usually the least understood, and areas where common mistakes often happen and do come up quite often in organic production certification. All right. All right. And so the NOP, I just want to say, has multiple areas in it. So if you are crop, a crop producer or livestock, and also if you are a handler or a processor, for example, if you take organic strawberries from an organic strawberry farm and you process them into a can or a jar of jelly, you would be considered a processor or handler. So the NOP runs over all the rules and regulations for all those areas. All right, so land requirements, section 205.202B. So any field or farm parcel from which harvested crops are intended to be sold, labeled, or represented as organic must have had no prohibited substances as listed in section 205.105, which we'll also go through really quickly. Any of these substances apply to it for a period of 3 years immediately preceding the harvest of the crop. So for example, if you're an apple orchard and the last time it was sprayed, for example, with a synthetic fungicide, let's say was August 1st of 2023, then that crop can only be harvested after September 1st of 2026 and could be sold as organic only if you have a certificate verifying your organic status. So a 36-month transition period. So understanding what is prohibited and what is allowed during your transition time is very, very important. So let me show you section 205.105 that's mentioned in this section. It's kind of a read, but I'm specifically going to go through A and B. So this is your allowed and prohibited substances, methods, and ingredients in organic production and handling. A is for synthetic substances, and this is actually a list of allowed synthetic substances for the use in organic crop production. So anything not on this list mentioned in A. So it's 205.601. That is specifically for crops. And the other section in A is specifically for livestock. Any synthetics not on this list are completely prohibited. In B, this is a list of prohibited non-synthetic, AKA natural substances that you can use in organic production. So anything not on this list is allowed. Does that make sense? So it's a little confusing, but I'll say that again. List A, this list is allowed synthetic substances. What's not on this list is prohibited. List B is a list of prohibited natural non-synthetic substances, and anything that is not on this list is allowed. Okay, I hope you guys got that. Very important to go through these lists. So in essence, both naturally and synthetically derived substances are allowed and not allowed and strictly prohibited in organics. The National List of Allowed and Prohibited Substances explains how to determine if a product is allowed or prohibited, and we're going to drop that link in the chat. And also, if you want like detailed information about any commercially available inputs, the list of visit the OMRI, as we all know it, the Organic Materials Review Institute, and they have a list of pretty detailed information on commercially available inputs and substances. So before applying any substance, herbicide, fertilizer, fungicide, anything like that to your field, I would say absolutely submit a materials input to your certifier for them to review prior to the application. Any mistake with applying prohibited substances will result in the loss of an organic certification for that field, which also means if you're in transition, that means a reset on your 3-year transition period. So very important to understand your substances and your inputs. Okay, so we're going to roll into 205.202C for land requirements. Um, so we were just talking about substances that you would input yourself or not. Now let's talk about stuff that other people do around you, especially in an urban environment. So organic farms must have sufficient buffers where necessary to prevent contamination by prohibited substances outside of your farm or outside of your field. So, as part of their application, most certifiers will require a field or farm map to show isolations, buffers, barriers, drainage diversion, etc., from conventional fields or other conventional locations that are surrounding your farm. So most common sources of field contamination are genetic drift, which is genetically engineered pollen that blows in from like a neighboring farm or gardens in an urban environment, and also pesticide drift, which is insecticides or herbicides physically drifting and volatilizing from a conventional field or a conventional neighbor garden into an organic field. So what is a sufficient amount of a buffer distance from you and them? Nothing specific in these regulations, but commonly and generally, 25 feet is considered a safe distance. The farmer has to provide to the certifier that the buffer can sufficiently protect that crop from the spray of any conventional pesticides or substances. And a physical barrier like a tree line or a hedge can also sometimes mean that your buffer zone can be a little bit thinner on that field edge, on that strip on that field edge. If you actually create harvested, if you can harvest crops off of your buffers, let's say berries or something like that, the crops that are grown in that buffer have to be treated as conventional because they are a buffer for conventional inputs and substances, which means that the harvest you take from those buffer crops cannot be combined with the organic harvested crop in that field or take on that certification, just as an FYI. Okay, so we're going to drop in the chat a couple of really great guides to explain buffers. So conservation buffers in organic systems, a California implementation guide is a really, really great guide for recommending the design of your buffer zones. Oh, sorry. There we go. All right. So moving on, I wanted to point out this section of the NOP 205.206A, crop pests, weed, and disease management practice standards. We're also gonna drop this in the chat too, so you can directly link yourself to this NOP. So, what the first part of this section states is that for management of pests, weeds, and diseases from an organic farmer should use preventative management practices like crop rotation, sanitation, cover cropping, and resistant varieties like seed varieties and species before applying any substances. So not shown here, but in this section is also a subsection B through D stating that you should employ crop rotation, cover cropping, and mechanical and physical methods first before you want to, or before you kind of technically should go to substances and inputs like pesticides and things on that list. You should definitely do other forms of mechanical or even, let's say, hedges to bring in beneficial insects, things of that sort, before you decide that applying substances is where you need to go. Okay, so in lieu of that, to try and avoid using substance inputs, um, doing those pesky pests, right? IPM may be a really great way in which to try and control your or have a pet sort of pest management. So farmers transitioning to an organic production system, like they often find that pests, disease, and weed control are one of the biggest challenges. And for a conventional farmer, when it comes to pests and diseases or outbreaks that occur, it's very easy for them to reach into this like big chemical toolbox for them to just use. But organic farmers have very few options when it comes to insecticides, fungicides, herbicides, things of that sort to be applied. So ideally, successfully transitioning your farm to have from the beginning a system in place that is preventative and more long term is key to creating a more balanced ecosystem. Which is where integrated pest management could really work for you on the pest end of things. It has ways in which you can solve your pest problems while minimizing the risks to people and the environment. So IPM can be used to manage all kinds of pests from urban, agricultural, wildlands, and natural areas. And I also, on top of this, highly recommend going to check out this link that's in the chat. It's by ATRA Organic IPM Field Guide, which is an excellent organization called Agricultural Land-Based Training Association. And they put this guide together for IPM from a series of trainings. Also, if you ever need a little extra help there, technical help, our very own program director is an entomologist and very fluent in IPM. And we're always happy to serve as a resource for your IPM needs. Okay, so section 205, which is really easy one to remember, rotation practice standards. So organic farmers must use a crop rotation that achieves these 4 specific outcomes: maintain or improve soil organic matter content, provide for pest management in annual and perennials, manage deficient or excess plant nutrients, and provide erosion control. So kind of off to the side, but the NOP defines crop rotation as the practice of alternating the annual crops grown on specific fields in a planned pattern or sequence in successive crop years so that the crops of the same species or family are not grown repeatedly without interruption on the same field. meaning that organic farmers must plant another species in between the plantings of the same crop on a 3-year or longer rotation. To help you there, we have a couple of resources for you. So farmers actually have a lot of flexibility and resources available. These are just a couple of them when it comes to cover crop rotation planning. Our sister school, Utah State University Extension, put out a great webinar last year on crop rotation, and we've pictured one of their graphics up here. And there's a link in the chat for the webinar. Another great one is SARE, has a great planning manual on crop rotation for organic farmers. It's a PDF download. They have a section with an example crop rotation for vegetable farmers in transition from conventional to organic, among many other great sections on like tilth and intercropping, also pest management and weed control with cover crops. So figure A at the bottom there is a picture from our very own colleague and state soil health scientist, Debunker Sanyal. He recently, his recent work on evaluating forage crop, cover crop mixes, specifically for the desert of the Southwest. And we can drop his work in the chat as well to take a look at what his research is doing. It's ongoing research to evaluate the important role of cover cropping for our specific soils and environment. An updated guide is in process, so we'll let you know when that comes out. But you will see a link in the chat to his current research. And also, don't forget the Rodale Institute has a vast amount of information on and research on cover crops as well. So dropping one more link to help you out with cover crops in the chat for you. They specifically have a section on if you operate as a low-till or no-till operation. Okay, Section 205.204, Seeds and Planting Stock Practice Standards. So, organic crop farmers are required to use certified organic seeds and seedlings, plant stock as they call it. There are limited exceptions for cases where organic varieties that you need cannot. So, how do I say? So, there is an exception, but it's in a limited exception. If you have a case where your variety that you want to plant cannot be easily or commercially sourced through a certified organic seed provider, but you will need to talk to your certifier about the process that you need to take in order to grow seed that has not been organically certified. So for example, let's say you couldn't source an organic variety of seed, is if you were growing like a native variety, native to Arizona variety. So pictured here is an example of Native Seed Search in Tucson and their collection of native seeds. And perhaps your particular sales on this variety is pretty high and quite specialized and niche. And your local sales are high on this. And you wouldn't be able, or you can't seem to be able to find a viable, organically certified source for this particular variety that you grow and sell so well. So in order to be eligible for the exception to use a non-organic untreated variety, you would have to go through a few things first. So you'd have to conduct an organic seed search, as they call it, to verify that the variety you're searching for is not commercially available by a certified organic seed company, which means you have to contact each of these companies at least a minimum of 3 and specifically verify that they do not have that variety in stock, and also that they do not have a variety that has similar attributes to the variety that you're looking for as well. All right, so then of course you'd want to document those as evidence for your certifier. Get in contact with your certifier and submit the proper documents you need to them of your seed search, organic seed search, and they will take it into consideration um, and tell you like a yay or nay on that one. Um, but the considerations that they're looking for, your certifier is for non-organic untreated might include things like quality, germination rate, variety, purity, environmental factors, etc. And just so you know, like price is never an approved reason to use any sort of untreated or non-organic seed. Also, side note, coated and treated seeds of any kind is not allowable in organics. Okay, so section 205, 203A, soil fertility and crop nutrient management practices. So this is about tillage. So tillage is part of certified organic, and it can be a controversial topic, but tillage is actually allowed in organic if it's used to maintain or improve soil conditions and minimize erosion. So tillage is part of the toolbox in organic. So for example, in this picture here, local farmer, our beloved Emily Heller, owner of Benevivento Farm, is breaking new ground. With our particular AZ soil compaction, Bermuda grass, etc., she needs to till to break up the surface to receive the seed, or to have water penetrate, or for just an initial handle on the Bermuda grass situation. And so she doesn't have to keep tilling. She will apply likely a silage tarp to help suppress the grass and weeds. Now, she's not going to continue to recreationally till her entire plot, say like once a week or once a month or on a particular schedule. She will strategically decide to till only when it's necessary and not on a schedule. She may till in specific areas, a little more in others, a little less in others, or maybe not till ever again, and enlist other ways in which she can improve the soil. So for example, crop rotation and or cover cropping. So again, implementing tillage is part of the farmer's toolbox in organic, but not necessary. Okay, so section 205, 203, B through C. Soil fertility and crop nutrient management practice standards. So we know that environment, soil, animal health, human health is at the heart of organic. This section is about soil fertility and crop management practice standards. So the producer must manage crop nutrients and soil fertility through rotations, cover crop, and the application of plant and animal materials. The producer must manage plant and animal materials to maintain or improve soil organic matter content in a manner that does not contribute to contamination of crops, soil, or water by plant nutrients, pathogenic organisms, heavy metals, or residues of prohibited substances. Which leads me to this particular standard. So in 205, 203C 1 through 2, the use of composted manure and or compost containing manure can be used for your soil fertility program if it's produced through a very strict process outlined here in this section. If you make it yourself or if you're using a third party, your compost must adhere to these particular guidelines in number 2. which explains the maintenance temperature and the number of days that temperature is required to be at that in that maintenance area, maintained in that number of degrees. And it has to be also recorded. So if you're doing it yourself, you got to record it. If you're getting it from your supplier, you have to make sure that they are also recording it and it's a reliable source, that they have kept it at these temperatures. Otherwise, if it is not in this particular way outlined, it is considered raw manure, regardless of its age. If that's the case, then another set of rules are outlined for that in the first section. Number one. So if the raw manure is applied to your field, you have to wait a minimum of 120 days before harvesting any of those crops, that the edible portions of those crops. So this is specifically 120 days for vegetables that do not touch the soil, for example, or sorry, that do touch the soil, which is roots, leafy greens, things of that sort. And then you'd have to wait a minimum of 90 days before harvesting crops whose edible parts do not touch the soil. So for example, corn, steak tomatoes, sweet peppers, etc. Not shown here, but actually part of the full standard our section is sewage sludge, which is completely prohibited, and burning of crops, residue to clear them out, although it can be something that you could use for disease pathogen or insect control or to stimulate germination, but sewage sludge is completely prohibited. So this section, 205.103A through C, is record keeping, which is a huge part of being organically certified. So this section of the NOP record keeping explains pretty much how record keeping is like proof that the farmer has made the measured decisions, you've taken appropriate action, and you can demonstrate your compliance with organic. It's also kind of protects your operation if it's ever questioned or challenged. So in a nutshell, this rule requires that the certified operation must retain these records concerning production or harvesting or handling of all the products that are intended to be sold under the label. And the record must disclose all activities, all transactions, all inputs in a sufficient amount of detail. And lastly, these records have to be kept around and available for the inspection by the certifying agent for a minimum of 5 years. So there's no particular rules about how your record system must be set up. So it's up to the farm to create the forms that records like your inputs, your field logs, seed and planting stock, harvest, equipment, cleaning processes, your sales, for example, can be created and generated by you, the farmer, and to suit your particular process and the way you need to keep your records in whatever it is you're growing. So there are some I've seen some places that just use a paper system. And then some I've seen use OneNote as a way to collect all of these records. But there's also some software platforms that you can Google out there. If you're a larger operation, they usually work a little bit better for you. And they come with like a monthly or a yearly fee. Okay, so that was a lot of information, I'm sure. But right, it's very, very good to read through the entire NOP. And it's not as long as you may think it is when you're on that website, because it also includes, like if you were a handler or a processor, or if you were in livestock, but getting to know the NOP is extremely, like, it's absolutely what you need to do in order to transition and understand what certification means. Um, This is common mistakes. So we went through a few areas of the NOP and a few regulations that are usually like difficult to understand and or are common mistakes, but there are other areas too. And so we're going to bring them up for you right now. And after this, we will be hearing from Courtney Buzzard as well as Marina Oriel. And then we'll take a nice short break because like I know this is a lot of information to handle and we've been going for about an hour and a half now. And after that break, I'm really excited to actually bring in Nick, and he is a certified organic crop producer. And Colleen is actually going to be doing some sort of facilitated interviews with him. So you'll be able to ask him after his interviews some like detailed questions about transitioning. All right, so common mistakes. Not fully reading your particular chosen certifier's handbook um, and the NOP. So it is tedious, but if you do not know the regulation, then you don't know the expectations. And we here are at Extension are always here to help you if you have questions as you read through the rules and regulations. And remember that all certifiers are different and they have slightly different things that they will require from you, depending on which certifier it is. And we recommend doing a really deep search and talking maybe to other certified farmers, what certifiers they like the most, or um, also like some of them will put their handbooks up online, like on their websites for you. So you can like read through those handbooks as well, see their pricing structures. And also you can request a call with them to make your best decision for your operation. Not completing field history sheets. So if you remember kind of like the general requests of a certifier, field history sheets is one of them. So they require this at application and need your field history sheets to make an informed decision. Crop rotations, dates, rates of application of any inputs or fertilizers, your pest management, good record keeping on your field history sheets is definitely going to be something that you're going to need to want to not make a common mistake for you. Yeah, and also being all of these record keepings to be easily accessible, not just by your certifier, but by your inspector when they come to visit you too. Incomplete farm maps or not submitting a farm map during your application. So when applying, often the certifier will require detailed maps of your farm, your field, and your processing facilities, which help them evaluate what your buffer zones look like and areas for contamination. And then maps should also correlate to the field history sheets, either by, let's say, field numbers or field names, and they both should be talking to each other and they both should be relaying the same sort of information, and should be telling the same story about what you're doing. So, not including plans for the coming years. It's great to explain what you're doing now, but you definitely want to let them know what your future plans are too. Just in case you may be doing something that might be non-compliant a little later on, and finding out too late is too late. So include your future plans to prevent future problems, I guess, is just as important for determining your compliance as are the plans that you currently have in place. So you always want your certifier in the loop on what your future plans and ideas are before you actually do it. So, for example, like in the future, you end up using a type of fertilizer that you had not put into like your future plan, and submitted it to your certifier. And later on, it's determined that that is actually prohibited. And so that could jeopardize your future renewal for certification. So also have on file and submit all your third-party information. So statement forms like previous land use, neighboring land use, your compost supplier, your seed suppliers, your custom operations, third party, anything, are required to verify the practices of that third party in relation to your compliance with NOP regulations. Another common mistake is not keeping farm logs. So accountability, traceability, and transparency play a very impactful role in organic certification. Having an auditable trail is really important. And on top of following all the organic rules, you must provide that you're going to do so by documenting and keeping records for up to 5 years. So all of this really goes back to record keeping. For example, like your receipts from organic seeds that you purchased, log where you store those organic seeds and where you planted them in the field and the harvest of that particular seed variety. Okay, so yeah, there are more common mistakes. For example, again, not documenting non-organic untreated seed sources. So as we learned, the NOP requires organic seed, and if not commercially available, non-organic untreated seed may also be used if you meet the exceptions with having contacted 3 or more organic seed companies and documented that you did so and had it approved by your certifier. Also important to note here is that planting a field with treated seed is equivalent to a treatment on the soil, which results in that field's disqualification and going back and resetting the transition to the beginning of 3 years again, and or not reissuing your certification. So treated seeds are not allowed. All right, so using prohibited materials slash, as they're sometimes called a lot of the time, inputs. So the word input is like an inclusive term for all materials that are brought to an organic operation, like fertilizers, pest control, seed, compost, etc. So the presence of just one prohibited input in the formula or the system makes the whole thing prohibited. So we went through compost restrictions, and not addressing those compost restrictions is also a common mistake because the NOP rules for temperature and number of days at that temperature has to be strictly followed by yourself or your third party. Otherwise, it's considered to be raw, like I said, and so the rules for the number of days allowed for that manure to be out in the field then apply. And all of these applications of compost should be included in your field history sheets or within the application, depending how the certifier likes to receive them. Improper storage is also a common mistake. So storage or shared tools or equipment areas for organic crops, harvest specifically, or your input materials cannot result in any threat or commingling with inorganic crops or inputs in any way. So having your kind of SOPs and logs for cleanouts and logs for shared tools and equipment and proper storage is needed for your certifier and inspector to show that you're keeping these two separate. And if you're using the same, let's say, tools for organic and non-organic, that your logs and your cleanouts show that you have cleaned this particular tool out so that you can use it for organic. Also, a common mistake is not immediately addressing previous conditions or non-compliance. So if you have a certification with conditions or correctable violations, it's important to immediately address this to get and or to keep your certification. So a certifier has four options when deciding whether an operation is certified organic. So one, the certification. When the operation is fully compliant, the certifier will give you your certification. Then they could also say, hey, here's your certification with conditions. And if usually these conditions are minor, non-compliant issues, and you want to immediately address those. They can also issue a notice of non-compliance for correctable violations. So a notice of non-compliance allows the operation to submit a response with proposed corrective actions that you would take typically within 30 days of the date that of issuance from the certifier. And the certifier will then evaluate the corrective actions and then determine whether the operation of the farm complies with the regulations. And if that operation appears to comply, then the certifier would then decide to either go ahead and give you your certification or certification with conditions. Um, the fourth thing is that the certifier may say, hey, we've got a combined notice of non-compliance and denial of certification for non-correctable violations, and that is an explanation in itself. um, so the last is not reporting any significant changes to your organic operation. So all significant changes in your operation must be reported to your certifier. These include like any additional crop varieties, fertilizers, again, pest control, any new farms that you might have created or any new fields that you may have. If you changed some facilities, let's say your wash station, if you redesigned your organic label, etc. All of these changes have to be reported. Even if you don't decide to recertify the next year or take a temporary or permanently decide to, you should still notify your certifier. So if you're not, just so that you're not like suspended from certification, which impacts your ability to like reapply in the future. Okay. Phew. So with all that information swimming around in your head, and hopefully I explained it well enough, um, let's go into some pros and cons, you guys, of organic transition and certification. If you'd like to just quickly, let's drop into chat your main pro and your main con to organic certification. We can have a really quick little discussion. For example, from my personal opinion, um, a pro for me would be that organic comes with a premium. So it's a high priced commodity. It is a more profitable product to sell. And the market is so strong that I know that over time, it would be sustainable for me as a producer. But also a pro for me would be that over time, when you create your management systems for pest control and cover cropping and things, your inputs actually start to decrease. And so when your inputs decrease and your price on the market is high, it creates a pretty good profit margin. Um, I personally align with a lot of the philosophies of organic, the focus on human health and soil health and animal health and plant health and just being generally climate smart. I actually, nerdy me really likes the record keeping part. I think that's a pro to being very organized in doing business. But I have to say, I also feel like it can be a con because it is a lot of extra work and it's a lot of work to set those things up too. When transitioning or certifying like record keeping, I feel is the one of the hardest parts. So I feel like it's a pro and a con. Um, Another con I would say is if what I will do or am doing isn't actually working and the production itself is affected, I think that risk that you take going into it can possibly be a con for me. And depending on the certifier, perhaps the certification may also be a con. So let's see what you guys are saying in here. Okay, so pro. Benefits to the soil and consumer, absolutely great pro. Chemical free, definite pro. Create exceptional premium crops, yep. And a con from Basil is finding organic seeds and plants and record keeping. Yes, yes. But as you know, there is exceptions. So you can always talk to your certifier about how to make an exception to the particular variety that you really want to grow. Paperwork, yes, definitely a con there, Jessica. Yep. Second with Amanda, record keeping, date collection, initial setup of the systems, yes. And that 3-year transition is a great amount of time for you to really set up your record keeping system and your management system and start developing all the systems that you can before going for your certification or being approved. All right. And Bonnie Con, a lot more strict with regulations for soil and growth. Yeah, absolutely. I feel you there. Whether one likes paperwork or not, it still eats hours every week. Hard for a small producer to keep up with. Yes, I agree with you on that one. I personally have a quarter acre or had a quarter acre of production, vegetables, market garden style, specialty crops. And yes, it is. I won't say it's really hard, especially if you don't have the help to get all these programs set in place. Although it's a short-lived one. Once you have your systems and your records in place, once you create the system and then start working it, it does get a little bit easier, but that initial setup is definitely time for sure. Oops. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your pros and cons. Okay, so just want to drop the resources that are available for you. So obviously, us at the U of A Cooperative Extension, our Urban Ag Small Scale Beginner Farmer Program, we're here for you. For organic certification cost share program, you would want to connect with Robert Nick, I believe. Is it Robert Nick? And Ryan Hunt. So the OCCSC provides cost sharing assistance to producers and handlers obtaining or renewing their organic certification. So applicants can receive from 50 to 75% of your certification cost depending on the program funding. And the AZDA and the FSA, I believe, are the local agencies who lead this program. So take their numbers down, contact them, and they will let you know when the program is open for application.
Sorry, just to jump in really quick.
Yeah.
Robert Nick is going to be the person who has the organic listserv.
Okay. Got it.
Email Robert at ASDA if you want to be added to a listserv to get more information on OCCSP.
Okay, cool. So it's specifically Robert for OCCSP. Thank you, Pauline. And up next, we're going to hear from Courtney Buzzard from the Sweetie Center for Sustainable Food Systems at ASU. She's leading, the program is leading Arizona's transition to organic partnership program. Right after Courtney, we'll hear from Marina Oriel. She's from NRCS, Organic Conservation Specialist, and she will speak more on the NRCS's 823 and also how to prepare for future cycles on the 823. So I will stop sharing my screen in just a second. Thank you, everybody.
Hello, thanks everybody for being here today. My name is Courtney Buzzard. I'm with the Sweetie Center for Sustainable Food Systems at Arizona State University, and we're really excited to be working with the producers here in Arizona on the Transition to Organic Partnership Program. So I will go ahead and share my screen instead. All right, can we all see this? Perfect. All right, so the Transition to Organic Partnership Program. And I know you guys just took in a lot of information, but that is the exciting role that we are playing, is to help you both digest and also get you the assistance that you need, because we know that transitioning to organic is a lot of work, and it's a lot of information, it's a lot of paperwork, and it's a lot to learn. So here for the Transition to Organic Partnership Program, also known as TOP, more acronyms, of course, but it's a network assembled by the USDA's National Organic Program, which you all just heard a wonderful overview of. And it's really to support transitioning and organic producers with both mentorship and resources. The goal of the program is to grow the network of organic producers across the country. So this is a 5-year initiative out of the USDA. It was announced in the fall of 2023 and just kicked off last year. And then now, announced in fall of 2022 and just kicked off last year. So now going into 2024, we are really launching our mentorship program here in Arizona. We here at the Sweetie Center are the state lead here in Arizona. So we are working with TOP and with producers here to really provide guidance for certification, give people access to workshops, wonderful webinars like this. We're so happy to partner with U of A as well as one of our top partners here in Arizona. We're also going to be hosting field days and providing technical assistance for folks who are interested in transition. And TOP also offers education such as market opportunities, organic production guidelines, and obviously information about the certification process, because we know that is a heavy lift for a lot of folks. And here in Arizona, it is the 5-year agreement. The whole entire program nationwide is 5 years. And we're overseen by CCOF, California Certified Organic Farmers. They are the lead for our region here out of the West Southwest. So here at the Sweetie Center, I kind of just touched on it, but really these are our focuses here in Arizona and what we are trying to do. And we would love to work with any of you guys who are interested. We are building a farmer-to-farmer mentorship program to match people who are interested in transitioning to organic with folks who have already gone through the process, are certified, and do have experience and can help you out as you get going through the process. Community building is a huge aspect for us here as well as the technical assistance and training, workforce training and development through webinars and information sessions like these, and then also data collection and reporting so we can track how well the program is doing, not just here in Arizona or in our region, but nationwide. And our hope is for, great success out of this program and to see if something like this could be permanent maybe one day if it turns out that TOP is successful. So looking at the mentorship program, it's fairly straightforward. It's a mentor-mentee setup, and each side has, different things, different qualifications that go with it. If you are looking to be a mentor, these are folks who do have direct experience with organic certification. They do also get a stipend for their mentorship year. So it is not just volunteer-based. Yes, you are volunteering your time, but you're also compensated for it. So it is paid professional development, where you can also develop teaching and facilitation skills and also support Arizona's growing interest in organic production. As I'm sure all of you know, farming agriculture is huge here in Arizona, but unfortunately, organic is not so strong. We only have about 73 certified organic producers in the state. It does vary, as people get certified or drop their certification, but compared to the amount production we have in the state, it's really low. So we're really trying to, support the growing interest in organic because we do know the interest is there, but the support system is a bit lacking. So that's what we're really trying to build with this mentorship program. And then for mentees who are interested in transitioning, we're working with them as well. They also do get a stipend for each mentorship year. And you do get mentorship from a certified producer or somebody who has had years of experience working in certified organic production. A big lift here is that you do get direct assistance with building out your organic system plan and all of the paperwork process that comes with it, as well as the training, the resources, the workshops, and also access to NRCS organic transition funding, which I'm sure will be talked about next. And to be a mentee in the program, you do have to have the intention to become USDA certified organic. The commitment is about the same for each mentor and mentee. Mentors do have a 5-hour training session before they can start their mentorship. So they have a 45-hour per year commitment, while mentees on the other side just have the 40 hours of working directly with their mentor. And this can be in a number of different ways, from visiting each other's operations to Zoom meetings, phone calls, text message check-ins, whatever works best for you and your mentor. It's very flexible. And then the status of mentorship right now in Arizona. So we worked really hard last year trying to get the word out about this program, find people who are interested in, and we're really excited because we have gotten a lot more interest than we expected to out of this initial first year of the mentorship program itself. Right now we have 9 mentors in the program with 11 mentees. And on both sides, they are doing a variety of different things: vegetables, grains, trees, orchards, poultry, and hydroponic operations on the mentor side. And then on the mentee side, it's small to medium scale. We do have one larger scale rancher as well. And everything from poultry, cattle, sheep, grain. We have a big hydroponic and livestock interest at this moment in time as well. So very varied production, and our job here at the Sweetie Center is really to find somebody who matches up not only with your interests and what you were growing, but does have good experience in that specific field. And then just if you want to learn more about us, this is a great resource as well. I know we've handed you so many resources so far, but if you're interested in learning about TOP here in Arizona, this is our website. It's just arizonatop.org. You'll be able to read more about the mentorship program, see any events that we have upcoming. We do have a field day coming up on April 16th. It's going to be out at Blue Sky Organic. If any of you are interested in it, is open to the public and you're welcome to join. Feel free to go to our website to learn more information about that as well. And then the website is a great place for resources. So a large part of what we are doing here at Sweetie is to kind of take a lot of the information that was just given to you and kind of piecemeal and make it really digestible. So we're working on things like flyers, slide decks, fact sheets, kind of just to take everything in an easier way, because we do know that it is a lot of information, and sometimes just, reading long things can be uninteresting and unengaging. So we're trying to really work to make this as engaging as possible. And up here is an example of our latest fact sheet. It goes over the different certifiers that are currently working with producers here in Arizona, and then also what scopes of certification they work in, a little bit about their application, and also a link to their website. So resources like this are always going to be available on our website. Again, open to the public. You don't have to be part of the program to have access to these. So if you're just wanting to learn more about organic, or you're kind of on the fence whether you want to transition or not, want to become part of the program, feel free to visit the website to learn more. And then this is also our top email for here at the Sweetie Center. It's just organic.transition@asu.edu. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions. We've got a handful of people here very dedicated to this program, and we're excited to meet you and work with you as well. And I know it was just touched on, but we are also in the process of launching another program that is called Climate Smart. It's the Climate Smart Commodities Pilot Program. And we are part of it here in Arizona. It is a group of, I want to say 20 to 22 partner organizations working on this together. There's more details to come, but I just wanted to mention it since Climate Smart was mentioned, to stay tuned because organic is also going to play a part under this umbrella. So stay tuned for more information from us and other folks who are working on it as well. It is going to have kind of a similar look and feel to TOP. So yeah, just stay tuned for more information there. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Courtney. I'm not sure if Sarah is online still, but we can move on to hear about NRCS. Sarah, did you want to introduce Marina?
Yes. Hey, Marina, if you would like to start sharing your screen.
Yes.
Marina Oriel, she is from NRCS Conservation Organic Specialist, and she's here to talk to us today about a standard 80823, right?
Yes.
Yes. All right, take it away.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much for having me today. Like Sarah said, I'm Marina Oriel. I work as an organic conservation specialist with NRCS, and I work in a joint position actually with Oregon Tilth, an organic certifier, and the Natural Resources Conservation Service. So my role day to day is mostly providing organic trainings and technical assistance and resources for NRCS staff themselves, with the goal of helping them become more comfortable with organic systems and ultimately be able to better assist organic producers. So today, I'll share just briefly some of the opportunities for financial and technical assistance through NRCS, including this NRCS piece of the USDA Organic Transition Initiative, the 823 Organic Management Standard. So if you are not yet familiar with NRCS, just a brief overview, they provide technical and financial assistance for conservation-related activities. And many of these activities align really well with the organic regulations that you just went through. So just for a few examples, with soil health, they can support with things like planting cover crops, crop rotation, compost, nutrient management. For livestock practices, things like pasture and grazing management, diverse pasture plantings, fencing, walkways, watering facilities. For water conservation, things like irrigation systems, water catchment, wetland enhancement, and more. So first, very briefly, two big programs within NRCS. They provide assistance through a few different programs here. And first, I want to share the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP. EQIP provides this financial and technical support to implement practices that can be key components of organic farms. So things like establishing buffer zones, planting hedgerows, planting pollinator habitat, improving your crop rotation, creating a rotational grazing system, building nutrient management. There is a program within EQIP called the EQIP Organic Initiative that is specifically available to certified organic farms, transitioning to organic farms, and farms exempt from organic certification. And that's important when it comes to funding. So if you let NRCS know that you are transitioning to organic, they can submit your application to be ranked, as they call it, with other organic and transitioning farms so that there's a smaller pool of applicants you're being considered with for your application. So if EQIP is sort of like the 101 level of conservation programs, I would call the conservation stewardship program like the 201 level. CSP offers, again, technical assistance and payments for actively managing, maintaining, and expanding on conservation activities. So things, again, like cover crops, rotational grazing, ecologically based pest management, buffer strips. If you're already doing some of these activities, CSP can provide assistance for maintaining and enhancing these activities. CSP does not have a fund pool that's specific to organic producers, but many of these enhancements, like reducing tillage, are very relevant to organic production. So, as you heard about the Transition to Organic Partnership Program that is part of this larger USDA Organic Transition Initiative, NRCS has their own role to play in this Organic Transition Initiative, and that is through a new organic management standard that they have developed, 823. This standard supports many purposes, as I have on my slide here, to help organic producers meet the organic regulations, and it mirrors the organic regulations. So it specifically calls out things like the need for buffer zones. It calls out the need to use organic seed if commercially available. It is a standard that looks at the whole system as you transition to organic. So when I talked about EQIP, things like a hedgerow, those are sort of one-off practices that you can certainly apply for and contract through NRCS. This organic management standard is looking at the entire system, how it interacts, how it is all transitioning to organic. So keep in mind that NRCS staff are not necessarily experts in the organic regulations. They are experts in conservation. This standard is not meant to be seen as consulting for meeting the organic requirements. It is still your responsibility to understand and comply with the organic regulations, but there is funding available. If you contract organic management through NRCS, you can get funding for hiring a crop consultant or attending a workshop to help you understand the regulations and make sure you're on your way to meeting them. So like, let's say you're a mentee in the TOP program, and then you're also accessing this organic management standard, and you can also receive funding to pay for some additional workshops. All these things can work together. You can contract this organic management standard for your entire 3-year transition period. So as you learn, 3 years is the minimum, but let's say that you reach those 3 years and you feel not quite ready to apply for certification. Like you still want to work on your nutrient management or your soil health, something like that. You can still contract this standard, sorry, to help you. You can't contract it forever. NRCS will want to see you eventually become certified, actively working towards that certification. But this standard can support you throughout your entire transition period. Also, through this organic management standard, depending on where you are located, depending on the type of crops you grow, there is the potential for foregone income reimbursement for any dips in production you see during the transition period. And then just a quick reminder that once you are certified, if you are still continuing to work with NRCS, you're going to want to check with your certifier before you implement something new that isn't already included in your organic system plan. So how do you access these programs? The first most important step is to get in touch with your local NRCS office. They will visit your farm. They will talk through your options with you. The process of applying can take time, so I do recommend contacting NRCS when you have an opening in your schedule and try to get your paperwork completed in advance of the deadlines. The deadlines are announced each fiscal year. So Arizona's deadline for EQIP, CSP, and OTI this year was February 2nd. But applications are accepted year-round. So just because we passed February 2nd, I don't recommend putting it off. Get the process started at least by getting in touch with your local office. To be eligible for technical and financial assistance, you need 3 basic things: a tax ID number, a property deed or lease showing that you have control over the property, and a farm number. A farm number is something you can get from the Farm Service Agency, FSA. And the good news is they are typically located in the same building as your local NRCS office. So you can do it all in one visit. I also encourage you to check out the NRCS Organic webpage. Look at some of the resources that they have available. I think this can be really helpful for getting an idea of some of the language NRCS uses, some of the conservation practices they can support. They can be really helpful when you are approaching your local office, just to have an idea already of some of the things you're looking for support on. Some of your resource concerns, perhaps, that NRCS can assist with. And last, I will stick around for questions today, but also feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm always happy to support producers in learning about the assistance that NRCS has available, approaching NRCS and navigating some of the support they have for transitioning producers.
All right. Thank you so much, Marina and Courtney. Amazing programs. I hope you guys take advantage and reach out for some help and any questions you may have. Okay, so I'm going to kind of leave it open to the room. So does anybody have any questions? If you dropped them in the chat earlier, hopefully we can find them. If not,
I have
please.
2 questions from the chat that I was saving that we
Okay,
could start with.
sweet. Yeah, we are all open to answer those questions for you. So myself, Courtney, and Marina and Colleen.
Bonnie asked, since we are a pantry and a small farm, would we have to be certified? Everything we grow is organic. So my response to that is there are exemptions to organic certification. If you have less than 5,000 in revenue, you can submit for exemption. And really, organic certification is a personal choice. So if you're going to call yourself organic, but you don't fall under the 5,000 in revenue, then you would have to be certified to use that labeling term. But if you don't want to use the organic labeling term, then there is no requirement, of course. And so if you are offering, you know, a service like a pantry with your goods and you feel that it's not worth your time to be certified organic, that is, you know, again, up to your discretion. But yes, if you have less than 5,000 in revenue, you're not required. You do have to submit for exemption. I don't know if anyone wants to expand on that.
No, I'm good, but that is a great question. Anybody else by chance? You feel free to unmute yourself or throw a question in the chat.
We had another question in the chat from Half. Would the save seed from a crop that you did a seed search for be considered organic? And yes, it would. If you are certified organic and you have completed a seed search with your certifier and it is all approved, then anything harvested off that crop would be considered organic. And say that you were seed saving off that crop, that would be organic seed from there on out. So great question. And yes, you would be able to sell it as organic. And one question that popped up was about payment ranges for the new NRCS organic. Marina, are you able to answer that for us?
Sure, yeah. So I don't love to quote payments because they can, there are so many different factors that go into how much you can get for a payment per acre with NRCS. For this particular practice, It can range from $200 to $2,000 an acre, and that is a big range. It depends on what is your scale, the scale of your operation, what types of crops you're growing, if you're eligible for foregone income payments, if you fall into this historically underserved category. So there are many factors, but generally it's between 200 and 2,000 an acre.
Great. Bonnie asked, what about GMO seeds? Because of the genetic modification, are they still considered organic? No, they are not. Organic is actually the first non-GMO. And so that no GMO label that you see is a third party private, but when you see organic, it always means that there are no GMOs. And so no genetically modified seed is considered organic, even with a seed search. Half asked, are there specific supports for apiarists looking for the organic certification? I don't know if, Courtney, you're doing any support with apiarists?
We are not at the moment, but feel free to get in touch with us because we do have a big network. And even if there isn't someone we can connect you with directly in a mentorship aspect here in Arizona, we can look through the network in other states. And that way we can it would be a virtual mentorship program, but that way you at least have that person that you can do one-on-one support with, whether it's through Zoom or phone calls or whatnot. So feel free to get in touch with us and we can work with you to see who we can find for support.
Basil asked, are all the mentors Arizona based? That's a great question. TOP is a national program. And so while we have mentors and an Arizona TOP program, it is happening nationwide. And Courtney, if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do try to first find mentors here in Arizona. The problem is when I first started, what we touched on, where there's only 73 certified organic producers here in Arizona. So if you're doing something very specialized, it's very likely that somebody here in Arizona is not doing the same thing that already has that organic certification. So we have had to reach out a couple of times across state lines to find folks elsewhere, but we always look here in Arizona first. We find it's really valuable that if folks can travel and see each other's operations and do work together in person, that does have value added to it. So we always look here first, but as Colleen said, it is a nationwide program and the network is large. So if we can't find somebody here, we are always happy to look elsewhere and see who we can connect you with.
Great. Thank you so much. I don't see any more questions, but feel free to keep dropping them in as we go. And now Sarah is going to share on the screen an event survey QR code. We are ahead of time, which is great news because it means everyone can click on that link. I'll drop it in the chat, scan that QR code, and get ready so that at the end of the event, we can hear how this event was for you. We still have a whole nother session with Nick, which is going to be incredibly valuable to hear firsthand. But again, these surveys help us, as Courtney mentioned earlier, see if this is helpful, if it's not helpful, what to change. It's really, really important that everyone here take the time. We try and make it as short as possible. So yeah, if you could just save that, tag it, bookmark it for after the event, we would really, really appreciate it. And Sarah, I'll let you take it away while I drop the link in the chat.
Yeah. So we are going to take a 10-minute, much deserved break. So let's meet back here at 11. And at that time, Nick McCarthy is going to be interviewed. He's going to drop some amazing knowledge for us. And he's going to be interviewed by Colleen, who's going to do kind of like a facilitated interview style, asking of questions of Nick. And then after that, we'll open it up so we can ask our questions of Nick McCarthy. So 10 minutes, and yeah, we'll meet back here. Please take our survey. As Colleen said, it really helps us define our program and what we're offering to you. Thank you. See you in 10.
Okay, I hope everyone had a nice screen break for their eyes. We will give just a couple minutes for folks to get back. If you could give me a thumbs up or quickly pop yourself on camera, whatever works, just to let us know that you're back in the room, and we'll get started in just a couple minutes. Thank you. I'm seeing a good number of thumbs up and screens on. I'll give just a minute more. Great. All right. I see Nick is in the room. I'm going to spotlight him and myself just so that he'll be featured big for you all on the screen. We'll have a conversation and then we'll go back to gallery view so we can have an informal discussion group Q&A and we'll go from there. So if you give me just a minute here. Okay. Nick, thank you so much for joining today. I know it is busy season for you, so we're incredibly grateful that you made the time and you're here with us today. Just to get started, I'm hoping you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in ag, and the organization that you're here with.
Yeah, my name is Nick McCarthy. I'm the farm manager here at PEP. Before here, I really didn't have much ag experience. I was really construction oriented. I started an apprenticeship program as a mason, and I did that for about 10 years, and then moved back to Arizona about 7 years ago. And that's when I first started working here as a farm assistant. And pretty much just immediately fell in love with farming. Kind of just found it more rewarding, more fulfilling than masonry. Just growing my own food. And also supplying it to our community. Like a lot of our food that we grow, we donate to our local HR. I think after, I did that for about 2 years before the manager that was here at the time left and I took over. And at that point, I kind of started reading everything I could and learning as much as I could about organic gardening, researching new techniques to deal with the different pests and pathogens we have. It was kind of endless. In regards to PEP, PEP was originally founded a while ago, 1967, I think, by Dr. John Arnold as just kind of an education program. He started with a $19,000 grant and bought a school bus and emptied it out and filled it with books and supplies and drove around Southern Arizona as a mobile classroom teaching Mexican immigrants Spanish and basic education. Later, he, kind of got established. You might have heard of Pep Tech high schools. We have accredited high schools now. He's got a couple farms, one in Africa and one in Cameroon, that he does similar to what we do, just kind of job training and, teaching people, I guess, the basics of farming. The farm itself was actually his ranch originally. He had a little cattle ranch. He ended up donating that land to PEP to start this farm. He said because we were just in a food desert, there wasn't any good produce available at the time. So he wanted to, supply not only himself, but this community with fresh organic produce. So he started the Arivaca Community Garden. And we've been here since 1998. I think they got certified in 2000. That was before, NOP started. So this was a while ago. Now we do go to farmers markets. But like I said, a lot of the produce we grow, we donate to our HR. They have a Meals on Wheels program that we like to supply.
And what were the concerns? Are you aware? Have you talked to anyone about any concerns in that organic transition process? I know it was back in 2000, but if you've heard anything like, oh, it was really hard, or, it was easy when we transitioned, have you heard any information on what that was like?
Yeah, they said it was actually easy. Nowadays it might be a little different because it was starting as a ranch. There was fresh manure on the ground. They might say, we need at least the 100-day period to make sure that's, before you harvest any crops. But no, at the time, it kind of was a breeze. He made it sound like they came down, looked at a few things. The original certifier, ICS, was an international company, and they, I think, predominantly certified like bigger operations, like they do like wood, EPA certifications, things like that. So certifying something organic was kind of new to them, and it was apparently pretty easy. And then about 10 years ago, we transitioned to Oregon Tilth because he wanted more structure, someone that actually specialized in small crop production or specialty crop production on a small scale. And that was, he said, also easy. We were already certified through ICS, so they kind of just signed the paperwork and let us go. Yeah, I mean, there
Great.
was, for no real concerns that you brought up.
And because you mentioned that you're selling at some farmers markets, but it's not your main market that you're selling to. So what was the motivator to be organic certified if it wasn't the price premium?
Grant availability was a big one, I think, at the time. Also, he wanted structure. This was an educational garden, like a training facility. And he wanted some guidelines to work off of, other than just, reading the NOP handbook. And they provided that. I'm not exactly certain why he decided to go with the ICS in the first place. I guess they were just probably the easiest to get a hold of, maybe. Yeah.
A whirlwind trying to find a certifier and looking through. So yeah. With Oregon Tilth, they have more tailored experience with specialty crop producers you mentioned. Could you speak a little bit about your relationship with them, the general fee structure that you work with them?
Yeah. We pay $300 annually for just the crop certification. The actual inspections vary. The last 3 we had were remote, so they were substantially cheaper. I think they were about $900. And then this most recent one last year was in person, and that one was about $1,500. We are part of the cost share program, so we got pretty much refunded all of the fees for their inspection. They'll charge you for the actual the inspectors. I can't even think their travel expenses, as well as like all of their expenses in town, and the cost share reimburses for all that. So even though it came out as $1,500 on the bill, we got reimbursed, so it ended up being $900. And it seems to be somewhat standard across most certifiers. You're going to pay for their travel expenses and whatever costs them to come out. So I suggest, if you are going to get certified, sign up for the cost share program. We went through the Department of Agriculture.
And what was the process like with the Department of Agriculture? Is it an online form that you fill out? Did you find it tedious or quick to fill out? If you just go into a little bit of that for the cost share program.
Yeah, it was just an online form. This was done before I started here, but it sounded like any paperwork. It might be a little time consuming, but it's worth it in the end. So I suggest sign up for it if you can.
Okay. How many inspections and certification processes have you yourself been through? And could you walk us through the process, or to start to finish, of what happens, how you prepare as the farm manager, highs, lows, any common mistakes maybe you've made that we kind of touched on earlier?
Yeah. I've been through 3 so far. Like I said, 3 were remote through COVID. This last one was in person. We've got another one scheduled for mid-April. I was very nervous for my first one, even though it was remote. It was pretty intimidating. The manager I took over for was he didn't really do all of the record keeping he was supposed to. So I got a non-compliance on our first inspection for not keeping sales receipts or sales records. which sucked. They worked with you though. They didn't like not certify us, but they held on to non-compliance with, a contingency. If you don't improve next year, then we will have a problem, or you won't be certified. When they come, they're going to work off of a work order. So the order they go through with whatever certifier you choose might be a little different than what Morganfield does with us. But first, they go through our actual sales history and make sure what we reported on our OSP for annual sales matches our sales receipts. That's very important because our actual fee is based on sales, which is, like probably normal. But yeah, let's see. First thing they did was go through all of our harvest records, our receipts, our seed receipts, make sure all of our input receipts are there. Anything that we use, like you said, compost records, and yeah, I've actually got a work order here. It really just walks you through your organic system plan, their work order, in an easier way for them to follow. So any changes that you might have made will be on there, and they're going to go over them with you and make sure that they are correct and current. You're not doing anything you shouldn't be doing. Really, that you've embraced organic practices is a big one. They'll also go through a couple exercises. One was the trace back, where she'll pick a random receipt, or your inspector will pick a random receipt from your sales records. And off that receipt, they'll pick one vegetable, and they want to trace that back to your original seed purchase. So they want to see the harvest record for that plant, what field it came out of, what time you planted it originally, and seed receipt for it. Then the other one is a mass balance, where they will, it's similar, but they're going to pick one crop, and they're going to add up all of your totals and make sure that matches the actual harvest records. I think last year they did tomatoes, or no, I'm sorry, last year they did lettuce. So they added up all of our receipts, found that we had, our harvest records, found we had 95 pounds of lettuce for that season, 90 pounds of lettuce in our sales receipts, and then 5 pounds of lettuce that was donated, or I'm sorry, composted. Let's see. In regards to highs and lows, the lows was definitely getting to non-compliance. That, wasn't bad, but it sucked. Highs, probably this last one, we got a good job for, getting our records straight and keeping adequate records for them. So that was nice.
Congratulations. Sorry, backing up a little bit based off something you said about, they're looking to see how much you harvested in your harvest logs. Do you have to keep records by variety of vegetable, and how many varieties are you growing? What crops are you growing on how much acreage? I'm not sure we touched on that with the group here yet.
Oh yeah, no, we're 3 acres. We've got more land, but we're, intensively farming 3 acres. The rest is kind of just marked off as woodlands and buffer zones. We grow a lot. We've got and no, we don't have to group them together. So I just say lettuce, even though we've got probably 10 to 12 different varieties going right now. It's just lettuce. So, but I mean, we've got arugula, collards, a bunch of different lettuce, from head lettuce to, the quick cut, just, scissor cut them and then lettuce mix. We've got kale, broccoli, cauliflower, beets, radishes, turnips. Here pretty soon, we're going to pretty much clean out our greenhouses and start transitioning to our summer crops. We've got 3 big greenhouses, and right now they're filled with our lettuces. Oh, and one is just fully filled with snow peas. But here pretty soon we'll cut all that down and plant in tomatoes and peppers. And out in our fields we have 9/10 of an acre field, so they're 40 by 100. And each one of them right now is covered in cover crop. We've got peas, oats, rye, vetch, and a bunch of other smaller things that we use as a cover crop in the off season. So here pretty soon we'll mow that down and turn it in. We'll do a low till method and turn that green manure into the soil. And from there we'll plant, outdoors.
And so with all of these different crops that you're producing, it's really diverse. How do you keep your records in order and stay organized so that you stay compliant? And then if for any reason, like you mentioned before, you had non-compliance, if you do have that and you need to correct it, is there a deadline they give you? What's the corrective steps you take? Useful question.
Yeah, by the next year, they wanted us to have the records in order. But like I said, it might vary with your certifier. That's just what Oregon Tilth gave us. In regards to keeping records, I treat it as part of the actual whatever we're doing. If we're harvesting, I'm not done harvesting until I go write our harvest totals in our logs. We use Excel spreadsheets for everything. So we've got an Excel spreadsheet for our harvest records, for our sales records, our compost, fertigation, IPM. They all have their own little records. So if I have to go spray whatever neem oil, as soon as I'm done spraying, I'll come in here and write, where I sprayed it, what I sprayed on, how much I used, and then I'll consider my actual IPM done. And same with compost. If we have to add compost or whatever, turn the compost. I'm not done turning the compost until I come in here and say, okay, I turned the compost on this date, and now it's done. Which is it adds to the work, it does, but keeping records is going to make you a better farmer. It really will. It might suck, or it sounds like it sucks. It's a lot of work. It's complicated, but it's not. Once you have the system in place, it's really just keeping on it. Try not to forget. If you do it the next day, or try your best to.
That's amazing that Excel is sort of your go-to tool. Have you dabbled in other tools and realized, OneNote isn't for me, and this is why Excel works best for my operation, or 10 platform, it seems like it'd be really great, but actually the features are more than what I need. I guess, how did you decide on Excel for your record keeping?
It was just the easiest. I've got a little journal that I do small notes in, but then I will, come back in the office and input that in Excel. It's just a lot easier to keep organized. I don't have papers flying around everywhere. In regards to other like spreadsheet programs, Excel is just what we have on the computer. So yeah, no preference really for that.
Still in the record keeping logging arena, can you talk to us about your organic systems plan, or OSP, and how you keep it maintained and updated along with your field logs? I guess, do you think it's a lot of work, and have you gotten in a good swing of things over your years of managing the farm? Is it helpful in your planning, more of a burden? Everything OSP. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. At first it's a lot. It's probably going to be about a day's worth of paperwork that you're filling out. But once it's set up, it's pretty easy to maintain. Ours doesn't really change from year to year, aside from maybe adding a crop or taking a crop off if we don't want to grow it. Excuse me. But at the beginning of every year, Oregon Tilth will send us an email saying, do you want to update your organic system plan? If we've kept up on it, then I just have to say no, it's stayed the same. So like an example, this year we decided to add celery, and we're not going to grow watermelon, we're going to grow cantaloupe. So I just wrote him an email a couple weeks ago saying, please remove what was it, chamomile and watermelon, and add cantaloupe and celery. And then they'll email me back saying your OSP is updated. So if anything changes, I pretty much just write them an email as soon as possible and say, this is going to change. Will you update our OSP accordingly? And then, so at any given point, our OSP is going to be up to date. At the beginning, for the field logs, that's similar. Things aren't changing here. We're not changing things from day to day. So I did have to update our field map recently. And as soon as I did that, we've got a whiteboard that has our actual fields on it. And then we write, what we have in those fields. And as soon as I updated my field map, I updated that whiteboard to show it as well. And also in our records, I guess it's really just keeping up on it. If you do make any changes, just, notify your certifier as soon as you can, and then they will update your OSB, and that will be that. Yeah.
That's helpful that, as we talked about earlier, a lot of the pre-work sets you up for success. And so while it can be intimidating, or like a steep curve to get certified, after you get over that initial hump, you feel it's easier year after year.
Yes, absolutely. Once the system's in set and you're established, it's really just kind of filling in the blanks. Staying on top of the harvest records and your sales records, saving receipts, that's really important. In regards to the OSP, if you make any changes, just notify your certifier immediately, really, or as soon as you can.
Now, you have employees that work on the farm with you, is that correct? Or is it mostly you?
Yeah,
How do you
we've got
them
3 employees. Oh, I'm sorry?
How do you keep them organized and compliant with organic? Do you have an onboarding manual, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's training can be tricky. For the most part, we just try and instill, the whole organic mindset from the get-go. We try and tell them, well, educate them on not just like soil biology, but the biome. What is actually going to create healthier plants and healthier soil. And once they kind of start understanding that, then they want to abide by it. It's I guess we haven't had any issues training. People just kind of pick it up. I think a lot of people don't want to eat food that's been sprayed with pesticides or herbicides. They want food that's just grown in soil, good soil, be better for them.
That's great that we're kind of transitioning into the soil microbiome. Could we get into the weeds of production? So how do you manage your soil health? What practices do you engage on the farm? And we'll start with that.
For maintaining the soil health, we use crop rotations and also cover crops. We use compost, and I guess it's pretty much the big ones. Like I said, out in our fields during the off season, we'll plant a cover crop and kind of let that just grow throughout the winter. And in our greenhouses, we can't really do cover crops, so we do amend that with compost, and we practice crop rotations everywhere. So our greenhouses are, we'll say greenhouse 1 last year had tomatoes in it. So this year it's going to have peppers, and now greenhouse 2 will have our tomatoes. Right now, greenhouse 3 has got snow peas. So next fall, greenhouse 1 will have our snow peas, and we'll do something else in greenhouse 3. Out in the field, we just rotate counterclockwise. So whatever we had in field 5 is now going to be in field 6. And we just kind of keep going that. We usually have at least one field that's fallow. And I say fallow, but it's actually got a cover crop of some sort. It's not just barren land. We'll have a cover crop going, but it won't be a cash crop. It's just to fill the space. I guess that's about it. We do till. We try and keep it low till. We go, at the deepest, probably about 4 inches, and try and minimize erosion. For blocking weeds, we use mulch. We've got this paper guard. I forget the exact name of it, but it's like a construction paper, really. We've got a tractor that has a little mulch or whatever paper puller behind it. So we'll pull that down over the crops underneath the crops. And then in the actual walkways, we'll usually let the cover crop kind of stay established. Then we'll just either hand weed or weed whack that low enough to walk through. And yeah, for pests, that's tricky. It's changes all the time. We try not to spray much because we have beneficial insects that I don't really want to kill. So it's really just crop rotations help. Insect netting at the right times also helps quite a bit. Yeah.
Have you ever had a pest disaster where you just couldn't believe, I guess, that the pest infestation had reached this threshold, and sort of what was the action that you took and the outcome?
Yeah, it happens every year. We'll have something new. Right now, it's aphids. This kind of early warm spring, just they came out of nowhere really fast. So to handle that, I'm also seeing ladybug larvae everywhere and green lacewing larvae everywhere. So I'm not going to spray them with Dipel. Works pretty well, which is just a beneficial bacteria. But I'm not going to spray that. I don't want to hurt anything else there. So it's really just right now washing our vegetables. We harvested lettuce this morning, and we got a 3-tub wash system. And I will just keep washing it until there's no more aphids in the water, which this time it was 6 different dunks, which is kind of absurd. Next year, we'll probably try and spray maybe just the soil. Like as soon as we plant, we might try and Dipel the soil to see if we can beat them. Last year, it was cucumber beetles. That was the big one. They came after our pepper plants out of nowhere. So, and they're a hard body. Spraying them with anything really doesn't work. So this year we're going to insect net all of our pepper plants until they start flowering, and then we'll pull them off to try and maybe let them go somewhere else. We're also going to do, I read blue Hubbard squash they really love. So I'm going to plant a row of that along our fence to hopefully get them to go that way, trap crop them. And yeah, we'll see how that works. But it really is just, kind of seems like a new challenge every year, and it's how you deal with it. It's also going to change year to year. Before there was a big problem with grasshoppers. Before I started here, they got pictures on the computer of just grasshoppers demolishing stuff. Since I've been here, I haven't seen too many grasshoppers. So it might just be, I don't know. They didn't say they did anything special either. It was just they stopped coming. So it might be a breeding cycle. Like maybe, next year, all of a sudden they're going to hatch and we're going to be, devastated by grasshoppers. In which case we'll have to make a plan for that. But it's kind of up in the air, I guess.
Have you, just out of curiosity, have you used a trap crop before and seen success with it?
Not intentionally. Last year we grew a Hubbard, and it was just immediately the cucumber beetles went to it. So that kind of gave us the inspiration, and then I did a lot more reading and found that was one they really like. Yeah, I'm not sure how well it's going to work. I'm hopeful that'll make a difference, but I'm thinking the insect netting will probably help the most, because that's when they did the most damage was in our pepper plants where, maybe 6 inches tall. They just come and eat all the leaves off of it, and then we're out of luck. So if I can at least get the pepper plants to about 1 foot tall, or at least until they start flowering, then I think might have some good peppers this year.
What about plant diseases? Any plant disease issues that made you change your management?
Sometimes. Last year was minimal. We had a very weak monsoon season, so we didn't have. Sometimes we'll have powdery mildew show up on the squash. We didn't have that this year, or I'm sorry, last year. We are dealing with a mold. I forget what it's like, a white mold. It's called Sclerotinia. It's brutal. Right now to deal with that, they don't really make anything that you can spray on it. We've tried some of the beneficial bacteria and fungi. Like I read that I think it was like Trichoderma hazarium was good against it. That didn't really do much. Also, Bacillus subtilis was supposed to help, but that didn't really do much. I've been told try labs on it, lactobacillus, but we haven't tried that yet. Right now, we're finding most success with just planting things further apart, so there's more airflow, watering less, or a little less. We're pretty dry here, so we still have to water, regularly. But yeah, it hits our lettuce the hardest. the lettuce that we will plant like a whole bed, pretty densely packed, and then we'll use our little quick greens chopper to, come across and get little, baby greens. That once that mold hits that bed, it kind of just spreads through it. So we're not doing that anymore. Now we're planting them, individual heads, really, which, sucks. We don't really get nearly as much as we used to, but at least it's not spreading through our beds as fast. If it attacks one head, we can take that head out and, kind of stop the spread, really. That's been the biggest one that we're still kind of dealing with now.
And is there a big trade-off you see between organic production and, your profitability? Or is it maybe balanced out by decreased cost of inputs that you're putting in? What would your take be?
Yeah, it seems, I guess, I haven't tried growing or whatever, farming and selling conventionally grown crops. So I'm not sure how much more we'd actually yield. But, because of the price premium we get for organic and, the lack of input costs, it seems to balance out. It's not bad. We do okay. We probably make about 10 to 12,000 a year. And like I said, we donate a lot of our stuff. So it's not terrible. I think if we were a little more intensive in trying to sell it, we'd probably do a lot better. But I think it's still worth it. I'd rather be doing this than conventionally farming, and I'd probably still be washing all the vegetables just as much, trying to get the, whatever we sprayed off of it. But it's still inside of it. So
When you're trying a new input, let's say for disease or pests, because other action hasn't worked, do you have to let your certifier know ahead of time? And how do you navigate and find what organic inputs are allowed? Let's say it's like a last ditch effort that you need to use something for.
yeah, if it's OMRI listed, we can use it immediately and just tell them we're using this now. If it's not, then yeah, you have to ask them for permission beforehand. Send them the picture of the label, the ingredients, and they'll get back to you and say whether that's approved or not, or whether it's allowed. I just look for things that are OMRI. Arbico is a great place to go. That most of the stuff they have is approved. That's where we get our beneficial insects, and most of the inputs are beneficial bacteria, fungi, all that stuff. We'll get through them. I guess that's a big one. I'm trying to think of the last input we got was I got something called microbes, which was just a kind of a conglomerate of different bacteria and fungi, as well as some humic and fulvic acid that we're using as a little root dunk for our transplants. And we used it. It was RMRI approved, so we used it we just got some onion transplants. So we used it on that, and then that day I wrote them an email saying we're using this for a root inoculant. And a few days ago, this was a couple weeks ago, I wrote an email. A few days ago, they got back to me saying it's added to your OSB. So pretty much how it goes.
Great. So there's a strong communication between you and your certifier that's ongoing.
Yeah, they get back relatively quickly. Like I send them that email, and they email me back the next day saying we're going over what you just sent us. And then it took them a couple weeks to actually say it's approved and added to your OSB. But they usually get back to us pretty quickly, so that's nice.
Okay. From a sort of public facing perspective, I'm curious, do you notice a difference in how consumers at the market perceive you using the USDA organic label? Or can you tell, I suppose, do you have really loyal customers who it makes a difference that you have that certification?
To an extent. I think as long as they know we're not spraying anything bad on it, they would be fine with it. A lot of our customers we have seen for a while, so if all of a sudden we decided we don't want to get certified, I know they would still come get our produce because they know we're very organically oriented. We don't want to spray things on it. We want to eat fresh produce also, and they know that. some customers that are new, I'm sure they see the sign and they're like, okay, cool, I can trust that. I'm gonna go get their food. But yeah, if you've got a small, client base that knows you, like if you're only selling to your neighbors, and they know that you grow organically, you might not, need to label it or advertise that you're organic. We do. The farmer market we go to actually requires us to, well, we have the organic sign, so they want to see our certification for us to actually put that sign up. And your farmer's market, might be different. But yeah, if we want to sell our produce there, labeled organic, we've got to have that certificate.
Oh, interesting. So you provide the farmer's market manager with your certificate so that you can use that labeling there. Great. Well, I guess, Nick, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice to a farmer who's considering transitioning to organic? What would you have wanted to know when you were going through certification processes, or sort of philosophical advice on the foundations of organic production?
Yeah, philosophically, think about your soil biology. The happier it is, the better your plants are going to do, the better they're going to taste, in my opinion. Taste might be irrelevant, but I think they taste better. In regards to the whole certification thing, don't be intimidated by the record keeping. Just do it. Get it established, and then it's going to be easy. The more you do it, the easier it's going to be. And like I said earlier, it's going to make you a better farmer. If you had problems this year, but last year you didn't, check your records. What did you do differently? If you didn't keep those records, you're going to have no idea. You're really going to just be kind of guessing. Also, yeah. Another tip, don't be intimidated by the inspectors. I think they want to see you succeed. They don't want to fail you. If you're doing something you shouldn't be, then maybe you should be, a little nervous. But if you've embraced organics and you want to grow organic produce, then they're there to help you. They say that they're not supposed to give you advice, but they will tell you, if you have any questions about rules or guidelines, they will answer them for you. You may not be able to say, what would you do here for this situation? They might not be able to give you an exact answer for that. But they can tell you, what's within guidelines and what you're allowed to do. Yeah, it's difficult, but farming in general is difficult. Whether you're doing conventionally or organically, it's going to be hard work. So personally, I think this is much better. It's without a question, for my home garden, I'm going to be doing all of these practices at home. It's on a much smaller scale. Obviously, my records are a lot smaller than what we have here, and what we grow is a lot less. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your experience, your advice with us, and it definitely got me thinking. I see it got some people in the chat thinking as well. I'm going to go ahead and bring us back to a gallery here so that we can open up the floor for people to ask their own questions of you while we have you here. And I see we do have a couple in the chat. Bonnie asked, do you use nematodes in the soil? Any experience with nematodes for soil health?
Yeah, we did. We had fungus gnats issues 2 years ago, and that seemed to work. I can't remember. It was also through Arbico. I can't remember exactly which one we used. I think it was like a blend of 3 different types of nematodes, but it seemed to work. The fungus gnats are gone, and we haven't had them back. So I've also used them in my home garden for the same reason, and it worked there also.
And how about washing vegetables in vinegar and water, or using vinegar? I know some folks use it for weeds. Have you used vinegar at all?
Yeah, that's usually how we'll wash For the first dunk, I mentioned we have the big 3-tub washer. In the first dunk, I'll do vinegar and water, and then the rest will just be clean water after that. If it's really bad, we have bleach on our OSP. Like if for some reason we had white flies and they are a mess and excrement all over the place, then I'll use a little bleach in there instead of vinegar, and then continue to wash it, to make sure that it's off of there. But vinegar does work. So.
And now, Nick, this question you might have a really good perspective on, because you mentioned that when you stepped into your role, there was maybe not the best record keeping taken prior. And so you had that non-compliance experience. So Oriana in the chat asked about, she has stepping into this established 10 to 12-year-old perennial culinary medicinal herb garden, but she doesn't have any records of the past management. Do you have any suggestions for a situation like that in particular, where you have, no history of records? I can say that it would fall under the 3-year of organic management in terms of transition. So you wouldn't be held responsible for all prior records prior to when you stepped into management. But I don't know, Nick, if you have any advice on sort of stepping into an established farm and getting records in place.
Yeah, they'll probably they gave me leeway. We didn't have we didn't have any sales receipts for anything. So it was, they really didn't like that. But it was pretty much get it straight, start now, keeping your records, and next time they come and visit, they want to see that, your record keeping system is established and you are keeping up on it, and it's auditable. In regards to this one, if you can't get like an affidavit from the previous landowner, then you're gonna have to do the 3-year transition. And at that point, you'll start keeping your records. So just start now what you've got in there. In regards to what you were growing previously, unless it was GMO or treated seeds, you're probably okay. But you're gonna have to, probably go through the transition period.
Great, thank you so much. Do we have any more questions for Nick before we let him go? If you have a question, now's your time. Drop it in the chat, unmic yourself.
I have a question, Colleen.
Great, Basil, go ahead.
This program was called Transition to Organic. And I think for a lot of us, we're doing organic practices already. And so the transition is more toward the certification part of our practices. Can you talk a little bit about the mindset of that? You said that, don't let the record keeping, keep you from pursuing that, but how much of this is the minutia and how much of this is mindset?
It's probably a little bit of both. I say that. I guess it's we had our, we got the spreadsheets and all that, so it was pretty easy for us to just keep inputting that data. If you're starting from scratch, it probably is a little tougher in regards to what system you want to use. But I don't know. I want to say don't be intimidated by it. Again, just start, from square one, whatever you're growing, start keeping your records now. You're going through the transition period right now?
I have a new field that I want to, from the very beginning, do all the correct planning and record keeping so that I can obtain certification. But, starting from scratch is one thing, but if there's no farming activity, then I'm wondering if that's going to work in my favor. But I basically just wanted to get your thoughts on it's not so much a transition to organic, it's a transition to the certification component of it.
Right.
Our practices might not change very much, but the practices of all of the underpinnings of it all, it's not just records, it's, all the details, all the planning that goes into that as well. So the shift is not so much on thinking about how to attack a problem or how to amend the soil or what products to use, but it's how do I document all of that?
Yeah, it's the who, what, where, why, when kind of thing. If you're going to spray something or plant anything, write down what it is you planted, where you planted it, when you planted it, and what it was that you planted. And once you get used to doing that for everything that you do, it's not a big deal. Like if you said this land hasn't been used before, but you're already organically minded, you're probably okay. So when you do decide to plant something, just write down exactly what it was you planted, when you planted it, and start from that one. So next time you plant, just add to that list. If you do decide you need to, add compost to it, then save the receipts. If you're making your own compost, you need to start keeping records of your compost. Our compost records are pretty simple. We try and keep everything as simple as possible. So our harvest records just have what variety it is and how much we actually harvested of it. Our sales records just show the date, how much we sold, and where we were selling it. Our actual compost records just show when we turned. Sorry, hang on, looking at the computer behind me. When we turned it, how hot it was. That's if you're just applying, straight manure. Keeping in mind you can't harvest any vegetables, for that certain period of time. Just write down when you applied it, how much you applied, and that's really it. If you already embrace the organic, the mindset of it, you really don't have much to worry about aside from keeping those records. So just, I would say start as soon as you can, just so you get in the swing of it. It shouldn't be too hard. It's going to take a few minutes at the end of every day to input this information. So don't let it, deter you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add on a little bit less of the process, but I think one exciting opportunity that can make the payoff maybe worth it, maybe not, are the new NRCS supports and the EQIP ranking. And so really weighing out for you if that's a benefit and worth your labor of time or not. And that's only something that really will be a decision made operation by operation if it's worthwhile or if it's not worthwhile for those sorts of new opportunities that are coming down. Any last questions? Okay, well, thank you again so much, Nick, and we hope that you have an amazing season, and we're grateful that you were able to come and share with us. Sarah's going to pop back up on the screen that event survey for us, and I will drop them in the chat. I'm actually going to drop 2 surveys in the chat. One is the event survey, which will be on the QR code. The other is going to be a needs assessment. Our needs assessment is specific to the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension, and it will really help decide, where resources and programming are going. And so I highly encourage you to take that and let us know what you want to see. We also use it when we go and talk to USDA, so we can say, this percentage of urban and small scale farmers in Arizona said that EQIP is confusing to them. And so it helps us to really make sure we're bringing the best resources for farmers in Arizona. And I'll drop both of those in the chat. We really use responses to advocate and to bring better resources, hopefully even more funding to small scale and urban farms in Arizona. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll leave this up on the screen for a little bit. Hope you all can take it.
Thank you.